Okay, well, welcome to the new 2016-17 Science Lab. We're just doing it right here in the studio. Okay, guys, so I wanted to keep it kind of fun for our first one, do something that you guys could enjoy, so I wanted to start with food. So actually, these food experiments will continue for the next at least 2 more shows, but maybe 3 more shows after this. So today I wanted to talk about cheese making, which is just a cool thing in general, but also some really cool science. So do you guys know what cheese is made from?
Milk.
Milk, yeah.
Nice, well done. Do you guys know what is milk?
Protein from a cow.
So milk does contain protein, definitely, but it's not just protein. What else is it? Go ahead, Nate, just read it off the
Sugar.
screen.
Is
I
it
think
too?
it's fat, protein, and lactose.
Yeah, would you call it like an emulsion of fat,
Yeah,
protein, and lactose and water?
I think emulsion is what I would call it.
So
Exactly.
if we could jump to my computer screen, possibly. I've got a small diagram that just sort of shows this, but milk is actually mostly water. 87, 88% of milk is water. And then in that water are suspended these little particles, proteins, fats, and sugars. The sugar in milk is called lactose, and there's different types of fat and protein. And it's the fat and protein that really allow us to make the cheese. And there's a special kind of protein in milk called casein. Have you guys heard of casein before?
I have.
Cool.
Not really sure what the difference is, but I have heard of it.
So it doesn't really matter too much, but in general, proteins are these really complex molecules. And when we look at them, they're not just straight lines of molecules, they're all twisted and bent up. Becca, could you go to the next slide? When we get a chance, if we could just show this picture of a casein
Oh, wow,
molecule.
that's cool.
They are complex molecules, proteins. Casein is no exception. And the reason that they're so bent up and folded up is that there are special parts of the molecule that are magnetic, positive or negative ends that stick together. And what we want to do is break those magnetic bonds, what are called hydrogen bonds. We want to break them up, break up the casein molecule, which will make it not. So normally, casein in milk just kind of bounces around and doesn't attach to other molecules. But as we break those bonds, it'll start to stick to the fat globules, it'll start to stick to other proteins, and it'll make what are called curds, which is the beginning of cheese. So we're gonna break up this casein using acid. But there's different ways to do it. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Becca. Acids and enzymes are the 2 things that curdle milk. So you may have seen bad milk in your fridge before. It might have looked sort of like that pot right there. But really, cheese is, in a sense, milk that's been left to gone bad, milk that's been left to get acidic. So we're taking fresh milk and we're just going to add acid to it to get to this point. Professional cheesemakers, will you go to the next one? Professional cheesemakers use something called rennet. Rennet is the most common chemical used to make cheese. Rennet actually comes from the stomachs of ruminant animals, like cows. It's an enzyme. It's a mixture of different enzymes, but it mainly contains the enzyme chymosin, which does the job of breaking apart that casein molecule, like we talked about. But we're going to do it a different way. So if you go to the next slide, Becca, we're going to do it through lemon juice and apple cider vinegar. Okay? So we can jump back to the studio now, and we'll actually go through this process. So in making cheese, one of the first things you have to do is you have to heat up the milk. You want to heat it to about 160 to 180 degrees. That will help to kill off any bad bacteria that might exist, and it'll also help to prep the fat and the protein molecules to be broken apart a little more easily. Okay, so the other cool thing about this is we're going to make half of the cheese with lemon juice, which will give the cheese kind of a lemony flavor, and half of the cheese with apple cider vinegar, which will give just a little bit of that apple cidery flavor. Do you guys have a preference which one you do?
I'll do the apple cider.
Okay, so I'll have Nate, I'll have you go first with the lemon juice.
All
then.
right.
So Nate, into that measuring cup, can you pour, let's see, let's just say we can kind of eyeball this. So we need, if we were making a lot of cheese, we would want to measure this specifically. But since we're just making a little bit for demo purposes, we're just going to probably put in roughly a tablespoon of lemon juice. So
Should
Nate,
I put it in here or just throw it in the bowl?
Put it in there and squeeze in more than a tablespoon, what you feel like is comfortably more than a tablespoon.
That looks like more than a tablespoon. There.
Okay, killer. If we need to add more, we'll add more from
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so, and I'm also just going to kind of eyeball splitting. I have a pot of whole milk. You typically want to use whole milk for this because it contains the most fat, which is going to help make the best kind of cheese. If you're really worried about fat in your diet, which you shouldn't be, but that's a discussion for another time. If you're worried about fat in your diet, you can use low-fat milk. You cannot use ultra-pasteurized milk. And that's actually the reason I promised Becca we were going to make goat cheese. but you can only get ultra-pasteurized goat milk in the grocery store I go to, so we couldn't make cheese out of it, so I'm afraid we're only making cow's cheese today. But if
Fine.
you can get not ultra-pasteurized goat's cheese, you can make cheese this way with it too. Okay, so, excuse me guys, careful, I got hot milk coming through here. So, this is milk that's been heated again to that range of about 160 to 180 degrees. I'm going to just pour about half of this hot milk directly into this bowl right here. And we're doing this in a glass bowl just so that you guys can see what happens. Normally, I would actually just do this right in the pot that I heated. And all you need to do is when you're done getting it to that temperature range, when you're done getting the milk to that temperature range, you literally can pitch the acid in right then. So Nate, I'll have you pitch the acid in there for me.
All right.
And then here's a stir. You can go ahead and stir that around and tell me what you see happening as you do that. And actually, you know what, Nate? I'll have you add a little bit more lemon juice as you
A
go.
little more.
That's totally fine. Just kind of have it ready and just squirt more in and stir it
Until I see something happening.
until you see something happening.
We move the pitcher, Sam.
Yeah,
so
is it
that
blocking
we
the way?
can- Yeah, so we can see really well what's happening. And the mug, too, if we
the
can.
mug too,
Yeah,
please.
it looks like it's starting to
There we
clump up a
go.
little bit.
Yeah, go
that's
ahead. Add a little
weird.
bit more. It's not really too big of a deal if we add a little extra acid.
Okay.
It'll run off.
Yeah, it's definitely starting to clump up a lot more. the more I
Good.
Put in there.
Good. Okay, yeah, go ahead and stir it around even more. Let's add even a little
Okay.
more acid, Nate, and just make sure it's as...
Get it real clumpy.
Yep. So a good ratio if you want to do this at home is you can do a half a cup of acid to. Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so
Yeah,
Nate, is it
pour out
really
your milk
separated
in.
now?
Yeah,
Does it
very
look
separated.
gross? Like you shouldn't
Yeah.
drink it anymore?
Definitely.
Now you
I
know you
wouldn't
hit the right
drink
point.
that.
Okay, so
Yeah, so if you kind of look, it looks like cottage cheese floating in.
floating in water, right? So this is the separation.
Yeah.
Now I don't
this
know
is-
how I
this
feel
is
about milk or
cheese having
cheese.
gone.
Yeah.
The milk has gone from milk
Here we go.
to curds and whey. Curds are the chunky parts, and whey is the juice. So Nate,
Kind of
what
see the chunks there that I scooped out. The rest looks like just liquid.
Nate, you can pour that whole thing right into this setup that I have for you here. Go ahead and I'll hold this steady.
Here, we can move it right there.
You want to move it in front
And
so
then
we
we
can see
can
a little bit better?
see
Sure.
it a little bit better.
So what this is just a strainer with cheesecloth on the top. Cheesecloth is exactly what it sounds like. It's cloth for making cheese. And it's made to help strain out the cheese, or the curds rather, from the whey.
I always
So all
thought
this
the
liquid
cloth was
that's come down
made of
below-
cheese.
All this liquid is whey. Whey is the water that was in the milk. It's also some of the protein and lactose and fats. But
So-
go ahead.
Just a side question. like,
Please.
I sometimes have whey protein.
Yeah, whey protein
meal
comes from
supplement.
this.
Okay.
It dehydrated this. It used to be that whey was a waste product in cheese making, but people would dump it in large quantities, cheesemakers would, and it would have bad environmental impacts. So people started to research what can you use whey for, and it turned out there were so many uses, one of which is
Okay.
protein supplements. So at this point in cheese making, typically what you'll do is you'll take your cheesecloth and kind of just go like this, and you can sort of squeeze the cheese in there to help get some of the whey out. And then you would literally just leave this to sit 20 minutes, an hour. The longer you wait, the less liquidy it'll be. If you want it more like cottage cheese, you can wait less time. If you want it to end up more like queso fresco, like sort of the crumbly cheese they put on top of tacos, you could wait an hour or 3 hours. Okay? All right. Becca, you ready to do the other one?
Yeah.
Okay, killer. So go ahead and put that bowl back in the center for me. Becca, if you want to pour a little in that Tupperware container, I have apple cider vinegar. Okay, so the perfect. So the
Do little musical chairs here.
yep, just shuffling around.
All right. Are we all good?
The acidity of lemon juice is slightly higher. It's more acidic than apple cider vinegar. We're going to need just a little bit more. So Becca, if you want to pour a third of a cup of apple cider vinegar into the measuring cup. Meanwhile, I'm going to pour the rest of the hot milk into this guy for Becca.
All right.
And Becca, you may not have to use all that, so what I'm going to have you do is just stir as you're pouring. And when it gets to that point where Nate's was, when it really separates, you can stop.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect. Again, there's lots of different chemicals that can have the effect here. Anything acidic will do this, and then lots of different enzymes will do it too. Once again, the chemical that most cheesemakers use is called rennet. There we go. That's looking perfect. And it's amazing how quick this happens too. There are different kinds of
does.
acids that take different amounts of time, but vinegar works really quickly.
I don't even need the rest of
You
this.
do
I
not.
guess
You can put that on the side. Okay, great. So we're going to do the same thing with yours as we did with Nate's, and I'm going to kind of just have them. Actually, Tirza, can you take that? Or actually, one of you guys.
So
Let's put it on
doesn't-
the plate there.
Like you can't possibly put too much in, right? Because you're just using that as like to activate the process.
Exactly. The only reason that you would really not want to use too much acid is if you were planning on saving the whey and using it for
Okay.
something else. So folks who make this at home might use the whey for salad dressing. You can use it for meat tenderizing. It's a great meat
okay.
tenderizer. So for if you're going to do a marinade of some kind, it's fantastic. If you can get unpasteurized milk, which is a whole thing that we can talk about some other time, but unpasteurized milk contains live enzymes and live bacteria. And if you make whey from that, that stuff is a potent fermenter. So you can use it to make kimchi and sauerkraut and all kinds of other cool stuff.
Okay.
So, all right, so I've just got another piece of cheesecloth here that I'm just slowly unfolding. I'm going to put it back in our strainer and have Becca pour all that liquid right into the cheesecloth and strainer. Nice. Excellently done.
All right.
Cool. All right, so Beck, I'll actually let you, if you want to sort of tie that guy up and squeeze out some of the juice there. So that really is the basic process
Weird.
of making cheese.
I've
If you
never done this before.
isn't it cool and easy?
It's
I'm
really
okay.
easy.
I'm
So-
just getting dizzy again.
So next steps for making cheese, if you were making real cheese and you wanted to make that, so really almost any kind of cheese can be made from this starting process. But when you think about other types of cheese that are harder than this or that have interesting flavors, those are cheeses that have been left to age, or we call it in cheese making, we call it ripening. So that was basically the process. Does that make sense? So the next step would be we could press it and we could leave it for much longer to let all the water drain off. Okay? And I did that this morning, or really last night. So I made two different kinds of cheese here. So again, we've got our lemon cheese and our apple cider vinegar cheese. One cool thing about using these acids that are flavored is that you get a little bit of that flavor in the cheese. So I've got a couple knives. I've got some generic wheat crackers right there. If you guys would each do me a favor and give this a try. This is exactly the same as the cheese you just made. It's just
Rolling
that
crackers.
I made it at home earlier.
Yeah, let's get that picture out of the way so everybody can see this.
Oh, yep. Perfect.
Space over here.
Make everyone jealous of our cheese.
And wait, did you make this cheese?
I made this cheese last night. And you can see the texture. It's probably hard for
want some
viewers at home to
cheese
see, but you can actually see the texture of the cheesecloth on the cheese, which I think is kind of cool. I think it looks nice. This cheese would crumble really well. Oh, and guys, one other thing, I didn't put any salt in this cheese, which lots of people do,
Okay.
because that brings out a little bit of the flavor.
The salt does?
So it'll be a little bit bland, but hopefully you can taste some of the acid that I used to form it.
Thank you.
All right, so this is the lemon juice one. So Tirza, tell me if you can taste any of that lemon juice acid in the cheese.
Yeah.
It should be a very light flavor if it's there at all.
Here you go.
You can kind of tell?
Yeah, like it's a little lemony.
Just a little lemony, right?
Not like too strong. You're like,
And I think that the nice thing about it is it isn't too strong, but some people like that lemony flavor.
Want some?
I mean, I'll have it in a minute. Yeah, thank you. I love cheese.
this is really cool.
It's pretty cool, right? And so if you want to make a cheese that doesn't have any kind of a flavor, you're thinking, hey, I don't want that apple cider flavor, I don't want that lemon flavor, pure white vinegar, distilled vinegar, will make a very clean tasting cheese.
Now with the acidic acid or like the citric acid that you use, like
Yeah.
the lemon juice or the apple cider vinegar, could
Right.
you also use the powdered citric acid?
Cheers, I'm so glad you asked that question.
Oh.
Yes, you can definitely get powdered citric acid, and in fact, you can use pretty much any kind of an acid. I did a little bit of research today, so I think that where you want to be is at about 3.5, a pH of 3.5 or below. So on the pH scale, Nate, would you jump forward a couple slides for me here? One more. Okay, so if we could jump to my computer screen. Here's the pH scale, and then here's some examples of different chemicals, foods, drinks that have low pHs. So you could use lime juice for this. You could use grapefruit juice. You could use orange juice. And this sounds really weird, but you could use Coca-Cola because of its pH. I don't know what that would Dude, there's a lot of other chemicals in Coke that might make it kind of weird, but I'm really tempted now to try to make Coca-Cola cheese.
I really think we should try it.
If there's any viewers at home that want to get creative with this, it is a pretty easy process. If you want to do this at home, the only thing I'd recommend is you really need to be careful with heating up the milk. That should be something that's done under the supervision of an adult. But additionally, even when you are, we can put mine right there. When you are heating up milk, you've really got to be vigilant to be stirring it because it can burn easily. And if you burn the milk, you're going to impart burned flavors into your cheese. So,
Would you recommend having a temperature, a thermometer?
yes, I would. So I didn't have it here to show you, but normally I do this with a pot thermometer, so a thermometer that will hang on the side of my pot and give me a real-time reading. If you wanted to make cheese seriously, and I was watching all kinds of videos on making Colby cheese and mozzarella, because I think I'm going to actually do this now that I know a little bit more about it. It gets more complicated, and you need to be at a specific temperature range for certain kinds of cheese. So you would definitely want that if you got more into this. If you just want to play with it and have fun, just heat some milk up and put some acid in it. Seriously.
And
So
it's great.
Right?
It really is.
I've heard that like all cheese is white, or at least most cheese is white. So like when you get cheddar cheese, everybody's used to like orange or yellow color.
Correct.
Is that true of all cheese? Because I heard that they add the color to make people feel more comfortable, like that's what they're used to seeing.
Yeah, and I actually, there's a specific story behind the yellowing of cheddar cheese, and I'm blanking on what it is right now, but that's true. It's a dye that makes cheddar cheese yellow. But you can think of some cheeses that are colorful, like blue cheese,
Okay.
which has sort of a greenish, bluish hue to it, and that's a byproduct of the organisms that age the cheese.
Okay.
So if we were to take this queso fresco, we could put it in a room that was clean and at a steady temperature, it would age over time. Bacteria in the air, just like they ferment other things, would ferment the cheese, changing its flavor and changing its color a little bit. But in its initial form, all cheese is white, assuming the milk you use is white.
Right.
I guess,
Hopefully that's the case.
and this is giving me all kinds of ideas. We could take milk, we could dye it purple, and I bet if we made cheese from purple milk,
Purple
you would get
cheese.
purple cheese.
We should try that too.
I don't know, maybe it would
Coca-Cola
run off
cheese
in the
and
way.
purple cheese. Those are
Somebody
two things I'd like to do.
Do this for
if
me.
you used a different flavor milk.
Or do like chocolate milk cheese? Is that what you're talking about? Now we're getting really crazy. If anybody at home wants to try something like this, make it, post a picture
Yeah.
or a video on our Facebook or our Twitter. That would be amazing. Or maybe in a few weeks, we'll try it ourselves. We'll see.
All right.
Awesome.
Cool. Any last minute questions, guys?
That was awesome.
Cool. Well, hopefully you enjoyed making cheese with us. We're going to take a break and we'll be back in the studio in a few. Thanks so much.